Welcome to the Gemsbach. This video is about Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens, a 2015 film directed by J.J. Abrams.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it? Yes.
In the wake of the ridiculous barrage of Disney Star Wars films and TV shows released at widely varying levels of quality over the past decade, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that Disney's first attempt, The Force Awakens, did a lot of things right. It brought the series back to the lighter and more exciting tone of the action serial style used in the original trilogy. It introduced a suite of interesting and fun new characters, its comedy and its drama were sufficiently effective, and it had the emotional core that was missing from the hollow, clumsy prequels. Do I wish that it had taken more risks with its plot? Yes, absolutely. No one in their right mind wanted the story to revolve around a third, even bigger Death Star. Maybe someone did, but they weren't in their right mind. Their input should have been discarded. Still, I suppose the Star Wars franchise has always had a certain fated recurrence theme going on, so that wasn't the end of the world. Yet the Star Killer base and similar echoes of older entries in the series have dominated criticism of the film, leaving what I consider to be the movie's far larger structural problem to go practically unmentioned in nearly a decade of reviews. And after the release of The Rise of Skywalker, a film that miraculously manages to compete with The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones for the crown of worst in the franchise, due in large part to its messy, bland, bloated obsession with those same sorts of callbacks, repetitions, or echoes, the ways in which Episode 7 set the series on the trajectory that ended up at Episode 9 had joined the conversation and left little room for folks to notice or discuss my quite separate technical concern about the filmmaking of The Force Awakens. So here's me swimming upstream to offer a video dedicated to that technical concern, the primary reason that I still consider Episode 7 a weaker film than most of the original trilogy, which is that its pacing is overrushed essentially throughout.
Use the toggle on the left to switch between missiles, cannons, and mag pulse. Use the sight on the right to aim, triggers to fire.
This is very complicated.
The nature of this video is such that it requires spoiling basic plot details of Episode 7, so you should only continue watching if you either do not mind spoilers or have already seen the film. So just to be clear, what do I mean when I say the word pacing? I mean the spacing between plot events in The Force Awakens, and the rhythmic connection between slower-moving portions of the film and faster-moving portions. And what do I mean when I say that the pacing of the film is overrushed? I mean that it's a movie comprised almost wholly of faster-moving sections that jam too many plot events too close together. Most of The Force Awakens is spent on the First Order's chase of the film's primary MacGuffin, the Luke Skywalker star map in the possession of BB-8. The first scene is the frantic removal of that map from a village, just as it is besieged by the First Order and razed to the ground. This marks the first of many disposable locations that will be introduced and almost immediately torn asunder, but more on that later. Subsequent to this sequence, the audience meets the protagonist, Rey, and these brief introductory scenes are the only relaxed experience that the viewer will have until The Force Awakens is nearly at its climax. From here on out, each scene in succession packs action and confrontation with little or no breathing room in between. Now, I can already hear the response to this allegation. So what's the problem? It's an action movie. It's supposed to be action-packed. Well, I agree, but I don't think that's as clear-cut a thing to desire as it seems. A good go-to example of the ascending pace of a satisfying action movie is Die Hard. It intersperses the increasingly violent, increasingly tense, and increasingly frequent interactions between McClane and the criminals with the experiences of the hostages, the mounting suspicions of the police, and McClane's stealthy traversal of the Nakatomi Plaza. Imagine instead the same movie shot as nothing but McClane pursued by gunfire as he runs from one room into another for 2 hours. The movie needs to establish a calm baseline for the tense and active moments to seem meaningfully tense and active. Or consider movies like Run Lola Run and Crank, whose basic premises theoretically entail that they are action movies that throw such pacing concerns out the window. And yet, even in such cases, if you're paying attention, you'll notice, and maybe even be surprised by, how often the protagonist engages in lengthy conversations and intentionally slowed interactions. Now, arguably that's a plot hole in Crank, but it serves an important stylistic function. Character development happens in downtime. Watching someone sprint and drive and fight tells us practically nothing about them other than their level of physical fitness. And more fundamentally than that, there's simply no action without inaction. Some calm, for contrast, makes action feel active. As a physicist might say, you don't feel velocity, you feel acceleration.
We have no confirmation, but we believe FN-2187 may have helped in the escape.
So now think about The Force Awakens, and let's pick it up where we left it last section with the 5-minute sequence that introduces Rey. This is followed up with Poe's torture, followed by Poe and Finn's explosive escape, followed by a ship crash, followed by a hand-to-hand fight scene, followed by a ship chase scene, followed by a deadly gas mishap, followed by a tractor beam capture, followed by an attack by Han Solo's debt collectors, followed by a Rathtar chase, followed by a Millennium Falcon escape sequence, followed shortly after by Rey's harrowing vision, followed by the attack on the tavern, and finally, you reach a tiny island of peace before you're vaulted into the climax. The conversations that carry the film's character development are squeezed uncomfortably between such set pieces.
To me, she's royalty.
Well, she certainly is that.
Discussions are never allowed to play out. Characters are never allowed to finish a thought.
That droid has a map that leads straight to Luke Skywalker.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me! Let go!
It's a film with nervous, insecure energy that seems to think viewers are in danger of wandering away if a scene goes a minute without something lighting on fire. Next time you watch it, pay attention to how many scenes involve the beginning of an interesting conversation that is interrupted by an alarm, explosion, or abrupt cut.
Luke Skywalker. I thought he was a myth. What?
Whoa, Finn almost had to come up with a difficult explanation for something after lying that he's in the Resistance. Too bad those 2 stormtroopers appeared.
Finn, what's yours?
I'm right.
Rey.
Wow, they almost got past exchanging names that time. Too bad the ship malfunctioned. Don't worry, the ship is fixed now, and Finn is pushing for more information about our protagonist.
You can fly anywhere. Why go back? You got a family? Got a boyfriend? Cute boyfriend?
None of your business, that's why.
No time for that, I'm afraid. Tractor beam! Oh, phew. It was just Han Solo. And now he's about to tell us our first reliable news about the later life of a longtime fan-favorite protagonist, Luke Skywalker.
I knew Luke.
Metal clanging noise! It's the Guavian Death Gang!
Oh, great. It's the Guavian Death Gang.
Actually, on the subject of the good old Guavian Death Gang, the Rathtar attack is the most obvious action set piece that could and should have been traded away in exchange for the end of some or all of those partial conversations. Whatever vision the filmmakers may have had for their CG octopus chase, the final outcome was a useless addition to the film's density of bland clamor. Apart from the aforementioned 5-minute meeting of Rey, the only exceptions to this trend I can readily think of, which come before the scenes with the Resistance directly preceding the climax of the film, and which contain conversations that go on for more than 45 seconds, are the tavern scene and the interactions with Snoke. But even in those scenes, you're never allowed to feel relaxed, as reminders of pursuit and tension are constant.
There's no chance we haven't been recognized already. I bet you the First Order is on their way right.
We hear variations on "We shall inform the First Order that the droid is here" from auxiliary characters on at least 3 separate occasions.
That BB unit, First Order is looking for one just like it.
Including hearing it from 2 characters in succession upon entering the tavern. The result is that the film feels exasperated and breathless, and the viewer doesn't become connected to any location long enough to mourn its decimation. Imagine a horror movie that is nothing but a series of jump scares. At some point, you're no longer even startled. You just think, there goes another one, as I did while watching outposts, buildings, communities, planets, ships, and human torsos damaged one after the other in The Force Awakens. The places often don't rise to the level of set dressing. They were toy sets for the filmmakers to strap rockets to. The village in the opening scene is almost immediately destroyed by the First Order. The trading post on Jakku is almost immediately destroyed by the First Order. Han and Chewbacca's new smuggling ship is almost immediately ripped apart by Rathtars. The Republic planets of the Hosnian system are seen for the first time during the scene in which they are vaporized. The tavern is the only location dwelt in long enough to begin feeling established, and a matter of minutes later, it too is completely demolished. And, of course, the film ends with the entire Starkiller base destabilizing and becoming a star. It's hard to believe, even as a matter of disbelief suspension, that there could be any chance of failure during the climax, since there had not been a new location introduced yet without it soon being partially or entirely blown apart. Now, of course, Alderaan doesn't get much screen time in the original Star Wars before the Death Star fires on it. And the longevity of the Death Star strongly resembles the longevity of the Starkiller. But if the first Star Wars movie was really paced like The Force Awakens, Luke would have met C-3PO, R2-D2, and Obi-Wan in a single 2-minute scene that ends with Luke fist-fighting a stormtrooper. They all would have been off Tatooine in about 5 minutes, the Mos Eisley Cantina would have burned to the ground as they exited, and the Millennium Falcon would have lasted about a scene and a half before exploding.
The name's Finn, and I'm in charge. I'm in charge now, Phasma. I'm in charge.
Bring it down. Bring it down.
In order to make my case, and make it clearly, I have had to emphasize an aspect of The Force Awakens about which I feel negatively. So I would like to conclude by reiterating that I enjoyed The Force Awakens, and felt that it was a worthy entry in the Star Wars saga. Fortunately for reconciling my enjoyment with my recent point about the disposability of the settings, the series has always been more about the characters and the emotional storytelling than about the backstory of the universe or each of the planets. Unfortunately, moments like Han Solo's talk with Kylo Ren are the exception, not the rule. Most of the rare, slower segments in the film were reserved for characters traversing alone in silence, which means that character development and emotional investment in those characters by the audience was harder to come by. And even Han talking to Ren is, technically, a conversation that's cut short. The overarching issue of the unrhythmic, overly quick pacing that plagues the first 2 acts, and the third, although you can't fault an action climax for that, is that we never get to live a while in the universe of Episode 7, nor with its inhabitants, as we do in the original trilogy, for instance on Tatooine, in the Falcon, on Bespin, on Hoth, on Dagobah, on the Endor moon, and even aboard the first 2 Death Stars. This makes it a lot harder for the action to be compelling when it arrives. Counterintuitively, I think this action movie would have benefited from sacrificing a bit of its action. That would have brought balance to The Force Awakens.